Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Dynasty Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined as always by Pat Fitzmaurice and by Scott Bogman. Fellas, we are having some debates going on today. You were just saying that you've had a lot of each other this week. You're getting a bit more here with our Dynasty Rankings debates episode. We've picked out 9 players that you guys are pretty far apart on, either positionally or overall in your rankings, or both for a lot of these cases. And we're trying to hit guys at every position. So we've got a quarterback on here, handful of running backs and receivers, and a tight end as well. And we'll just kind of go through and see if you guys can make your cases against each other of why you feel the way you do about these players. It's worth noting, just as kind of a general thought over all of this, that we're all kind of interested in everybody at the right price. So it's not like if somebody is lower on somebody, you're saying you can't possibly ever have this guy on your dynasty roster and you're terrible if you do. It's not that, but it's just guys that we see differently from each other. You two differently from each other. I want to remind everybody that all of our 2025 consensus rankings and tiers can be found at fantasypros.com/rankings. You can navigate to the dynasty rankings from there as well. All right, that was a long intro. But before we dive into the actual show, I do want to ask a little bit about something that happened earlier today, guys. Justin Fields was carted off. Now, guys getting carted off in training camp is kind of overblown a lot of the time. They just use the cart because why not? It's not.
Yeah.
It's
guys
not
got a hangnail. Bring the cart. Let's go.
Fields did have a limp, and obviously it ended up being a dislocated toe. But yeah, I would just say as a general rule, don't overreact to the cart in a lot of cases. But it brought up a good point that we were talking about a little bit before we started recording, Bogman, which is, how do you approach your dynasty rankings, not redraft, your dynasty rankings, when you see, I'll call it major-ish injury news? I mean, it's significant injury news, right? In training camp and stuff like that. How does that impact your dynasty approach?
It doesn't really. It shouldn't, right? Because specifically, I look in a shorter window, so maybe it'll affect a little bit here or there. But I think for most dynasty managers, unless it is a torn ACL, something where the guy's going to miss the whole season, or significant chunk of the season, maybe I'll adjust at that point. But for the most part, you kind of ignore what happens in the preseason unless it's a guy winning or losing a job, right? And that happens at the end of the preseason and training camp. So, early news like Justin Fields hurting his little toe, I think we're okay with for now. When we start to hear guys miss significant time, then react. But the small news is small news, and I'm not going to react to it immediately.
Fitz, what do you think?
I dropped him a couple of spots, mainly because I think Fields is probably one of those borderline guys right now who is probably worse than 50-50 to have a starting job in the league in 2027 after this next wave of quarterbacks that comes out in the next 2 draft classes. So you're going to lean heavily on the production he gives you in 2025 and 2026, maybe 2026 if he still has a job. And, now I don't know how aggressively he is running early in the season if he's got a messed up toe, and there's always the risk of cascading injuries that maybe lead to something else, like a soft tissue, hamstring or calf. So I'm a little concerned, and I dropped him below a couple of guys that maybe it was a borderline call with anyway. Like one of the guys
was that redraft, or was that you
Dynasty?
You moved him down
in both redraft and Dynasty. I dropped him a little bit.
Like I put him. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, I had him one spot ahead of, I think, Anthony Richardson, and I bumped Richardson ahead of him, even though who knows if things are going to go well in camp for Richardson and might be sitting behind Daniel Jones.
Did you consider, not a drastic drop, of course, but did you consider a drop of Garrett Wilson just based on the idea of if Fields does miss a lot of time, it's yet another year with this horrible quarterback situation for him?
Not yet. I mean, would it really be, from a passing standpoint, that big a drop off to Tyrod Taylor? I don't know if it would be. Maybe somewhat of a drop off.
People think like the college connection with Fields and Wilson, I guess. But I'm not saying you should have dropped him. I just wanted to ask.
Yeah, I have not dropped Wilson.
Okay. All right, let's dive into go ahead.
I was going to say I haven't moved anybody, but I wouldn't move Garrett Wilson because he's had bad quarterback play and been pretty good. So
yeah. Let's jump into some of our debates here. We're going to start with the one quarterback we have on here, and it's Michael Penix Jr. Fitz has him at QB 14, Bogman at QB 20. Fitz has him 103rd overall, and Bogman 165th overall. By the way, I tried as best I could to get a mix of guys like that one of you was higher on than the other. For whatever reason, there are plenty of both where you disagree, but the biggest disagreements, which is where we wanted to really focus on for today's episode, for whatever reason, seem to be Fitz higher and Bogman lower. So it does skew a little that way, and I'll just kind of preface that now that was not intentional or anything. There are a few here where it's the reverse, but for whatever reason, when there's a big gap, that tends to be the way it is on our rankings. But yeah, QB 14 versus QB 20. 103rd overall versus 165th overall. Fitz, is the guy who's higher. I'll let you go first. Why do you like Penix?
Yeah, and I like having the higher ground on Bogman on most of these categories. Like he can try to scale the castle walls, and I can throw rocks and boiling oil on him from my perch up top. All right, so with Penix, one caveat here. I think QB 14 is a perfectly defensible ranking for Penix in Superflex, where you're starting two quarterbacks, and it's totally fine to have a good pocket style quarterback in one of those spots, maybe even both of those spots. In one QB dynasty, I would probably have Penix like 2 or 3 spots lower, just since it's a little more important in one QB to get some rushing numbers out of your quarterback and raise the ceiling a little bit. But for Superflex, yeah, like Penix has a terrific arm. He is a smart pro style quarterback who is not going to take many sacks or make a lot of dumb mistakes. So he's going to have job security going forward. Basically, I think he's a guy who is going to average somewhere around 18 fantasy points a game over the next 10 years, like about 230 passing yards, about 1.7 touchdown passes a game, which gets him in the upper 20s, lower 30s most years. Like I'm not going way out over my skis and projecting like Peyton Manning type rate stats for him. But, and Boggs, if you have Penix at QB 20, I'm probably going to be aghast at some of the players you have ranked higher than him. Like which 3 guys do you have ranked in that?
I think the big ones that you're going to be upset about are Goff, which I think it's like, remember, 3-year window, and I'm looking at the next 2 years for Goff. I think maybe could still be better than Penix. I have Cam Ward ahead of him. I don't know where you're at Cam. And I do have Justin Fields at him right now.
All right. I think Cam is defensible. Fields and Goff, not so like Penix is a younger Goff. Doesn't run.
Yeah.
Going to give you pretty
true.
good. So like take the younger version of Jared Goff. I think you just don't like him because he lit up your Texas Longhorns in the college football playoff 2 years ago.
No. I looked at this and I looked at where I had him ranked, and I do take the consideration. I go, okay, well, what can he say that's going to throw me off? Goff is the one guy that I would consider moving Penix ahead of right now. And honestly, that is like, is the rest of your team built to win right now? If it is, then take the floor of Goff. You know what I mean? And see what he can do, especially if the defense is bad like it was at the end of last season. They'll have to pass a little bit more. Penix is that in terms of archetype, right? He is what you want out of Joe Burrow. Like that's what you want. You want him to build to be a Joe Burrow, a guy that's going to sit in the pocket, throw the ball. He's not going to get you those scrambling stats, not going to get you those rushing stats. But everyone else outside of Goff that I have ranked ahead of him is a guy that's going to get you rushing yards, all of them. Cam Ward was 4th in rushing yards per attempt last season at Miami. If they just let him run more, he can do it. He hasn't, or he didn't last season. I think he's going to do a lot of it at Tennessee. Fields, McCarthy, Lawrence, Murray, even Love after the knee injury or ankle, whatever it was early in the year last year. Purdy scrambles a little bit, and he's more proven than Penix. CJ Stroud doesn't scramble, but he's already had a really good year on the books. We've had 3 starts from Michael Penix. They were great. He looked good, and I do think he is a good quarterback because he lit up my Longhorns, Fitzy, but that's why I have him at 20, and I'm lukewarm on him instead of Pollyanna.
Yeah, just to come back on the Fields thing, like I really do have questions about his longevity because one, like he hasn't been a great passer, not terrible, but not great. And like, he just takes so many sacks, and which is Penix is the anti-Fields in that regard. Like, he does not take sacks at all, which coaches are going to love. If Fields continues to take sacks at the rate he has or did when he was the starter in Chicago, like, he's just not going to last as a starter. No coach is going to put up with that. He is a sack magnet.
Yeah, and I only have them 3 spots apart, so I don't hate the argument against Fields at all. If you want to take Penix over Fields, that's fine. I just, like I said, no rushing upside. Even with a guy like Burrow, we have Burrow at 4 because he doesn't run, right? And the other guys do. The top 3 do. So I think I'm lukewarm. I'm just not as excited as you are. That's all.
It's worth noting that quarterback and tight end, we didn't have a ton of there wasn't as much disagreement there as there is at running back and receiver. Like there are some names where it's like, okay, you're like around apart on overall, but like you're both generally high on Drake May, right?
This is our first one too. This is we'll get the gloves out. We'll get the gloves out.
But Penix is interesting because there's uncertainty there in both directions, right? About what the ceiling could be and what the floor really is, because we just haven't seen that much of it yet at the NFL level. So I thought he was an interesting one to include here. Let's go to the running backs, where, like I said, there were kind of more options here. The first running back that I want to start with, and I picked this guy, and he's almost representative of some of the other running backs that we couldn't pick all of them, but James Cook. Now, this is somebody who positionally, you're only 5 spots apart. It's RB11 versus RB16, which is not nothing that early on, but it's not like you're, 20 spots apart at the position. You are 20 spots apart overall. Bogman, you have him RB11, 32nd overall. Fitz, you have James Cook RB16, 52nd overall. This is in line with a lot of the other running backs early in terms of positionally, there's small differences. It's not crazy, but on the overall, by and large, Fitz is much lower here. Bogman, Breece Hall, you guys aren't that far apart positionally. You have him 19th overall. Fitz has him 32nd. Jonathan Taylor, 18th and 33rd. Kyron Williams, 29 and 39. There's a lot of these early running back types that, even if positionally they're all in the same tier for you, are a lot further apart in the overall rankings and where you would take them in a startup. So Bogman, I'll start with you on this one because you're the high man here. James Cook, I do want to talk about individually, but also from the larger perspective, being earlier on all of these running backs.
Yeah, I'm just willing, because I work in a smaller time frame, specifically in that initial draft. Fitzy and I have spoken about it, right? And I think the right way to build is to skip the running backs early. So I wouldn't take a bunch of these I wouldn't go 3 running backs without a wide receiver or anything, but I have it ranked where I would be willing to reach on a running back early to get an advantage in year 1, right? I think Fitzy isn't. So if we're just looking at a 30,000 foot view of the running backs overall and why I have them ranked higher than probably a lot of dynasty rankers and Fitzy, is because I'm looking to win in my first 2 years. Fitz sets up for the future in those first 2 years. So I think that is a fundamental difference in at least the rankings for an initial draft that we would have.
Fitz, does that sound about right to you for the breakdown of why we see the discrepancy?
Maybe not entirely. First of all, just for sake of clarity, this is our overall rankings where we have Cook, Boggs at 32, me at 52. That's for one QB overall. We would both have him lower in Superflex. We'd shoehorn some quarterbacks in there.
Pile a bunch of quarterbacks up there.
Yeah. So, all right. So obviously it was a complete fluke that James Cook scored 18 touchdowns last year. Like, he had scored 9 touchdowns in his first 2 seasons combined. And it's just sort of crazy that Cook scored that many touchdowns in a year when Josh Allen also had double-digit touchdown runs. But everyone realizes, I think, that Cook is in for a haircut on his touchdown total. I think Cook is probably maxed out on his usage. He's averaged about 13 carries a game the last 2 years, pretty close to max potential, I would think, for a 190-pound back. And Cook has really not been that prolific a pass catcher. Like, he does add some value there, but he's averaged 2.3 catches a game the last 2 years. And Cook's teammate, Ty Johnson, actually led all running backs in air yards last year, which is kind of a crazy stat. But it shows that Cook's pass catching appeal is maybe capped a little bit because, 1, the Bills don't throw to their backs a ton, and 2, he's not the only guy catching passes. And generally, that's just sort of it. The Bills have this mantra for their offense: everyone eats. Like, they use 3 running backs. They use a bunch of different receivers and tight ends. Cook is going into the last year of his deal with the Bills. If he stays in Buffalo, he's going to continue to be part of this ensemble cast. Now, maybe he goes elsewhere and plays a bigger role, but then he would probably be in a less potent offense that isn't capable of scoring 62 touchdowns the way the Bills did last year.
Bogman, anything more on Cook?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking specifically about Cook, I mean, he's still tied for 6th in carries inside the 5, and that was with all those touchdown runs from Josh Allen, too. A lot of those were from outside the 5, where Allen would just pull it down and run like a crazy man, right? That's what Josh Allen does. But I think one of two things is going to happen for Cook. I think he's in for another big year this year as a primary back for the Bills. And yes, I think Ray Davis gets a little bit more. And yeah, he's probably not getting 18 touchdowns again. But I think he's going to be good again, and I think he's going to get paid by somebody, and they're going to make him a feature back. He has had close to 300 touches before. I'm not saying that it's going to be smart, but I do think someone is going to do it. There's going to a lot of running backs are free agents next year. The class isn't going to be like it was this season either. So let's say Joe Mixon decides to hang him up. Nick Chubb isn't anything in Houston, and he winds up in Houston as their main guy, right? Like I could easily see that happening. So I think he either goes somewhere or he stays in Buffalo with this potent offense, getting these carries near the goal line next to Josh Allen. So I think I'm just pretty positive on James Cook's arc overall, even though I'm not like as a player, I kind of feel like I'm lukewarm about him like Fitzy is, but in terms of fantasy production, he's going to get it in Buffalo. And if he goes somewhere else, I think he gets paid.
If you want to jump into your own Dynasty debates, join our Fantasy Pros Discord community, chat with other fans, and get access to exclusive AMAs that wind up on our podcast feed. Here's our current schedule. Boggs and Fitz at 5 Eastern every Tuesday through the end of August. Myself and Fitz at 5 Eastern on the first Tuesday of every month. Come get your questions answered and be on the show at fantasypros.com/chat. All right, guys, one running back that Fitz is higher on than Bogman is TreVeyon Henderson. Fitz has him all the way up at RB8. That's 29th overall. Bogman at RB15, 48th overall. Fitz, you're the high man here. Why do you like Henderson so much?
All right, so most Dynasty leagues are PPR leagues, so passing game usage really matters. And TreVeyon Henderson is going to play on passing downs wherever he goes for the entirety of his career. He's a smooth pass catcher, super dangerous after the catch, so good on screens. And Henderson is a terrific pass blocker, even though he's not a very big dude. He's also going to have a role on early downs. He's an electric runner, especially on outside runs, averaged a touchdown a game over 4 college seasons. Henderson's got a rock solid floor and a high ceiling. Really excited about his NFL career in Boggs. There is just no way James Cook should be ranked ahead of Henderson. Like Henderson is younger and he's a better prospect than Cook was.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm jealous of the stones that you have with TreVeyon Henderson here. And I am jealous. My comp to him is Achane. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but Achane and Cook and TreVeyon Henderson are all guys in the same window that shouldn't be much more than 300 touches. TreVeyon Henderson comes in to the NFL as a guy that has had injury issues at the collegiate level. Last year, it worked out great, him and Judkins. So I still think he's a stud. I think he's great, but also according to the way that Ramondre Stevenson's contract works out right now, at least looking at overthecap.com is where I go to see these details. He is not a value to cut until after the 2026 season. So I think when you're rebuilding this offense initially with the Patriots, right? It may just be the fact you may be right. That like, look, Henderson is just too good. Stevenson is, the tread is worn thin. He fumbles too much. He's not that good. Maybe Henderson just pushes Stevenson out. But I think while you're rebuilding this offense, there is a potential to potentially split carries more than necessary to kind of save Henderson a little bit. It's not the way the NFL usually works, not the way you want to do things, but I think a guy with an injury history coming in shouldn't be 300 touches, and you have a guy that you're overpaying right now, maybe give him a little wear and tear initially. So to me, and I think I'm right in consensus with Henderson. I love that you think it's outrageous that I have Cook over Henderson. And maybe it is. I'm easily willing to say that But I think Henderson is limited in his touches, which limits his upside.
He is about 12 to 15 pounds heavier than Cook and Achane.
Okay.
I'll point that out.
Let me ask you this, Bogman. What would you need to see early this season to feel like, nope, I was too low, Henderson needs to be up? Like, what would that need to look like for you?
Like a 70 to 30 snap percentage between Stevenson and Henderson, which could easily come. That could be fine. And I would be low on him then. And I would say that I have Henderson probably in this grip. Henderson and Judkins, I would put in a grip from like 9 down to 15. So that's kind of the group, the tier that I'd be working with. I think, I don't think Omari and Hampton. I think Henderson is better than Hampton, or Hampton is better than Henderson. So like that's a line for me. No way. In any world, I put Henderson over Hampton. So that's kind of where I would stand. So I could move him all the way up to 9. He would be in that tier, but I just have him at the bottom of it right now.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have him as high as 8, but I think I lean closer towards the Fitz side of this, because even if he's not getting as many touches and just the snaps as we would want from a top 10 running back in Dynasty, he's going to be getting the valuable ones, like to Fitz's point about being PPR, and he's going to be getting the explosive plays we would imagine. So
do it right in your Achane. Right? If you do everything right, you're Achane.
I've been thinking of him as like a poor man's Jahmyr Gibbs, where yes, there's another guy in that backfield, but Gibbs is the guy that he's not as good as Gibbs. I'm not saying that, but like that kind of stylistic match. And I really liked Henderson, the prospect, like especially early on in his college career. Like he was a guy, I did a startup campus to Canton league going into Henderson's sophomore season. He was like the 3rd overall pick. It was like Bijan, like Caleb Williams, and then TreVeyon Henderson. I forget.
Him and Judkins last year were a cheat code at Ohio State.
Yeah,
and it was crazy 1-2 punch.
I don't know if Ramondre Stevenson is going to have anything close to a David Montgomery role for the Patriots.
Yeah.
Like they were ready to throw him overboard for Antonio Gibson last year with the fumbles. So
Antonio Gibson had a couple good numbers last year. Like you look at his elusive rating, his yak, it was pretty good still.
Yeah. Let's go to a maybe less exciting running back, but this is the widest gap on the list that we're working off of today. It's Rachaad White, and this is somewhat mirrored in you guys are apart on Bucky Irving. This is kind of the other, the side of that coin. Fitz, RB 51, 164th overall. Bogman up at RB 35. 120th overall. So neither of you is saying like this should be your RB1 or anything crazy like that. But there is a sizable gap there, Bogman. Again, this time you're the high guy. What is it that you like about White, or is this in your eyes a reflection of being a little bit lower than Fitz on Bucky?
Oh no, I love Bucky.
Okay,
it has nothing to do with Bucky at all.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think I think the reason Fitzy is down on Rachaad White is that usage for Bucky went way up at the end of the year, and Rachaad White was coming off the field, which, look, with a talent like Bucky, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you should like Rachaad White because Bucky's not good. Bucky's amazing. But I think Rachaad White is better than a Jag. Right. I think if you put him in that same bucket with like a Devin Singletary, somewhere in that place, like he's a guy that could go somewhere next year, and his floor is at least a really good 3rd down back. I think he could turn into, like at the end of his career, it could be like Austin Eckler. So I don't think he's a guy that gets pushed off of a team. And he's a free agent after this season. So 11th in pass block rate, he's going to be in there as a good 3rd down back. He's had 165 catches over the last 3 seasons. He's increased his yak per attempt every single year. So he's been improving between the tackles as well. So I just think Rachaad White is still a decent running back. I don't think he's in Bucky's neighborhood. I think we ignore him because of that. This is one of the few times where I'm like, let's look at this down the road, not just for season 1, because yes, this year, not big on Rachaad White because Bucky's there and the usage went way down at the end of the year. But I think Rachaad White can end up somewhere else next year in a much bigger role as a 3rd down back.
Fitz, you have Rachaad White ranked in a range of like, probably not really going to be on even any of your rosters. If he is, like, you're very willing to move on from him. Is that, in your opinion, a Bucky thing, or is it just you don't like White the player?
A little bit of both. So I don't want to talk out of both sides of my mouth here. And I talked about the importance of pass catching ability in Dynasty, where it's mainly PPR leagues, and Rachaad White has been a proven pass catcher. But, whereas Boggs says that the floor for Rachaad White is good third down back, I would contend that the ceiling for Rachaad White is probably good third down back. Like, there's just no lead back upside here anymore. And honestly, right now, he's not even the best third down back on his own team. Like, I think Bucky Irving was a better pass catcher last year. Like, Rachaad White was a guy who was in the right place at the right time for the Buccaneers in 2023 and had this very productive fantasy season, even though the underlying metrics said he was a pretty bad and inefficient runner.
I said that then too. I was like, look, Rachaad White could get pushed off this job by a really good running back. I said that then, but I also think that he's got a good floor as a receiving back. You don't.
Well, here's the floor. I mean, Bucky Irving comes on last year, starts off in a backup role, but as the season wears on, Bucky's snap share just continues to grow and grow and grow on a weekly basis. And Rachaad White's snap share is falling off the map by the end of the season. Like, in the Buccaneers' last 3 games, Rachaad White had snap shares ranging from 26.9% to 37.5%. And he was out-touched by Bucky Irving in those last 3 games, 64-10. So they pretty much they kicked Rachaad White to the curb, and I don't see why that's going to change, because Bucky was just electric last year.
I mean, it might not. I do think at that point in the year, you're pushing all your chips in, and Bucky is clearly better. So,
Is
let him
White
play as much as possible.
is White somebody, Bogman, for you that you are like targeting, like that you want to be adding to your teams because you are ahead of consensus on him? Or is it more just like you think this is the appropriate ranking, but he's not somebody that you're trying to like necessarily get a throw in on a trade or anything like that?
No, I want him. I want him in a trade, but it has to be in a certain scenario. Like, like Fitzy said, if I'm trying to win this year, Rachaad White's not my guy. He's not a guy I'm going to win a championship with this year. But I do think if he ends up in, let's say Alvin Kamara leaves New Orleans, they sign him and draft somebody, right? Now he should third down back in New Orleans at the very least, right? I think next year he'll go and find a situation that behooves him. And it's not going to be staying in Tampa, specifically if they lower his snap share down to like 30%. I think he'll go somewhere else. And I think, like I said, I do think he's better than a Jag. And I think he at least has a floor, which makes him like a low end running back 3 for me moving forward. That's all.
By now, most of you have probably heard of Reality Sports Online, the powerful fantasy sports platform where owners get to build and manage their fantasy team like an NFL general manager. But the question is, have you tried it? It's time to go see what all the buzz in the Dynasty community is about. Free agency, multi-year contracts, a rookie draft, multi-team trades, franchise tags, contract extensions, first-round rookie options, automated contract and salary cap functionality, and much, much more. I think it sounds complicated. It's not. The best thing about Reality Sports Online fantasy front office is that it doesn't take any more time than a standard league. It just requires more strategy. Think you're among the fantasy elite? Well, this is the platform to test your mettle. Still not sure? You can test out your general manager skills for free in a mock free agency auction. If you like what you see, use promo code FantasyPros to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. That's promo code FantasyPros to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. Fantasy just got real at realitysportsonline.com. All right, guys, let's go into the wide receivers, which is a really fun group here. Could have gone in a lot of different directions. This is the one where we were really initially kind of aiming to do about 8 names, but there were just too many good receivers to talk about. So I squeezed in an extra one here. We'll start with Marvin Harrison Jr. This is one where if you just hear the numbers of where you guys have them ranked, it doesn't sound that crazy far apart, but it's early enough in startup drafts that it is kind of actually far apart. Fitz, you have him wide receiver 11, Bogman wide receiver 14. Fitz, you have him 16th overall, and Bogman, you have him 25th overall. So that's a difference between like an early-ish second round pick versus an early third round pick, which is sizable when you're that early and there's so much talent on the board in drafts. So Fitz, Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously this mega elite prospect coming into the draft, gets put in what we thought was this really excellent situation in terms of he's going to get all the targets in the wide receiver room. He has a capable quarterback. it just didn't click. They used him in weird ways. He was really up and down. Kyler Murray did target him in the red zone, but it didn't work in the end zone specifically a lot of the time. But this is still a young guy with talent he's coming back a little bit stronger this year 2. Do you, in ranking him this aggressively as a top 16 player, again, in 1QB formats, do you see this as enough of, because the situation hasn't changed, right? So do you see this as he's going to take a step forward on an individual basis? Do you see this as he's going to take a step forward in terms of the usage and what the Cardinals are doing with him? Do you think there's going to be a step forward in the chemistry between him and Kyler? Because you're ranking him in a way that he needs to be better than he was last year for this to pan out. So where is it in that pie chart of his production that you expect to see a step forward?
You would think there would be a mandate for the Cardinals, for Jonathan Gannon, for Drew Petzing to get Harrison untracked after spending the number 4 pick on the draft in him. Now, whether it actually happens, I don't know. By the way, just to set the record straight, Superflex, I've got Harrison 32nd. Like, I would never take him in the second round of a Superflex startup. He's like mid to late third, I think. And honestly, after throwing haymakers at Boggs when we were talking about running backs and Michael Penix, like, this is going to be kind of a half-hearted defense, honestly, because of what you were just talking about, Worm, like how it did not click in year one. Like, I have Harrison ranked wide receiver 11, but I think there's a pretty clear top 10. And then I've got Harrison at the top of a tier that also includes guys like Jackson Smith and Jigba, AJ Brown, who's a little older, Tetairoa McMillan, Garrett Wilson, T. Higgins, Travis Hunter. I think the case for Harrison is that he was a phenomenal college receiver and was the number 4 pick in the draft. The case against, it just seems like he's in a really bad situation, and the situation makes it kind of hard to assess what sort of ceiling Harrison is capable of hitting. Like, we've talked about how Harrison had an average depth of target of 13.4 yards last season, and how odd it was that he was running these deeper routes all the time, even though that's not really his game. Like, he's not a speed merchant. And Kyler Murray has not been effective throwing to the middle of the field, possibly because he stands 5'10". Like, Harrison ran 3/4 of his routes on the perimeter last year, despite pretty good success rates for him on routes over the middle. So yeah, I have Harrison at wide receiver 11, but I really don't have any beef with where Boggs has him a little bit lower. And Harrison is just one of those guys I'm really anxious to watch in 2025. I'm hoping for more, but I'm worried we might not get more.
And by the way, it might sound like a really drastic drop to say, oh, he goes from 16th to 32 in Superflex, but look how many quarterbacks there are. I mean,
you have to put so many quarterbacks.
Trevor Lawrence. So, like, this is like Lawrence, McCarthy. These are the guys in range of QB 16, and you're
not taking any quarterbacks ahead of Harrison in a 1 QB league.
Yeah. So right. it's that is why there's such a sizable drop there. Before I throw to Boggs, Fitz, I just want to ask you, if you had to pick, say, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be significantly higher than this a year from now, or significantly lower, would it be lower, or would you be the optimistic side and say, I think he's going to take that step forward?
I don't think significantly higher, because I don't think he passes guys like Neighbors, Brian Thomas, Drake London. I think he could be comfortably inside the top 10, but that's about as high as it gets. My guess is that he's probably right around where I have him, wide receiver 11.
Okay. Bogman, what do you think about Harrison? Obviously a little bit lower, but Fitz says there's not too much disagreement here, really.
I think Fitz liking Harrison just got pulled into the orbit of him hating Trey McBride. I think that's more of what happened here than him loving Marvin Harrison. But there are legit concerns about Harrison, I feel like, here. And 99th out of 110 in catch percentage when targeted last season. 55th in yards per route run. 78th in contested catch percentage. He has the 10th most contested catches, which means he's not getting a lot of separation, but 78th in contested catch percentage. The biggest thing that I don't like about Marvin Harrison Jr. going into this season, I still think he's a very good wide receiver. Obviously, I have him as a top 20 wide receiver, and there's still a lot of meat on the bone for him to grow. But I hate the fact that he changed his entire body after one really weird rookie year, because I think you're going to get one of two things to happen here. He's either going to turn into Megatron and be able to run over everybody, because he had one missed tackle force last year, one. So, putting this bulk on may be like, hey, look, I need to win in these contested situations. I'm not going to get the separation I did in college. Let me box these dudes out. Let me be more physical and get the job done that way. Either it's going to work or it's going to slow him down and turn him into David Boston and give him leg problems because he's carrying too much top weight. So, that's getting a little too granular, most likely, but I think it's almost death by 1,000 cuts. You have Trey McBride here. He had a down year. He changed his body. There's all these little nagging things when it comes to Marvin Harrison. What I want him to do is shut all of us up, be amazing this year, and make himself a top 10 wide receiver. That's what I would love. But I'm not confident we're going to get it.
Let's go to a rookie wide receiver here that you guys are a part on. And really, I could have picked either Tet McMillan or Travis Hunter. I went with Tet because I thought it was more interesting. Hunter, obviously, we've talked a lot about, and it's a very easy case to make why people would kind of take a different approach with him, given that there's so much uncertainty with the position there. Tet, though, I like a lot personally. Fitz, you have him wide receiver 14, 21st overall. Bogman, wide receiver 26, 44th overall. We've been starting with the guy who's higher. Let me start with the guy who's lower this time. Bogman, again, wide receiver 26, 44th overall on Tet. Why is it that he's ranked in that range for you?
Yeah, and I was kind of floored that Hunter and McMillan were put so high and that I was so much lower than consensus in the initial, when I initially looked at this. And we talked about it even on this show before, where I have a tier, right, from 16 to 26. And that goes to me all the way down to where I have McMillan at 26. So could he balloon up in this? Absolutely. But I think people are ranking him as if he's going to be Mike Evans, right? Because he's that type of physical body, a big guy, making contested catches over players. He looks like he's already going to be the number one target guy by a wide stretch in Carolina. And that all can be possible, but he's not Mike Evans. And there are a lot of naysayers on McMillan coming into the draft. I wasn't one of them. I think he's going to be pretty good, but I don't know. I think we're a little bit too Pollyanna on a guy that we haven't seen play one snap in the NFL yet. I hope he's great, but I don't know that he's going to be great. And I think a lot of these other rankings of him so high is just a little bit too much for me. He's a wide receiver 3 for me. I can't have him as a wide receiver 2.
Fitz, I'm really curious to hear what you say, because going into this conversation, I definitely lean more on your side. I just don't see a path to him not getting enough workload in this receiving room to accrue a lot of fantasy points. And I think he's talented enough to take advantage of it. I think Bryce Young's step forward in the second half of last season was legitimate enough for him to, support Tet McMillan as a key fantasy asset. So I just like the fit. I like the player. I'm very in on him. Why do you find yourself feeling maybe not aggressive, but just ranking him higher than Bogman?
For a lot of the same reasons you do, Worm, and I can't hide my disappointment in Scott Bogman right now. Like, I know how much college football he watches, and if he had some nits to pick with the Tetairoa McMillan prospect profile, like, hey, I respect Bogman's opinion on that kind of stuff immensely, but like for it to be all about him falling outside the top 20 receivers for Boggs for the reasoning that he hasn't played an NFL game yet and has a blank resume like that's disappointing.
No, it's not that he has a blank resume, Fitzy. It's that people think he's Mike Evans. He ain't Mike Evans. He's good. He's a big bodied receiver, but I mean, we're putting him ahead of some really good established players. That's the thing. Like, you immediately put him ahead of Jordan Addison. I'm not going to do that. I thought Addison was better than him coming out. I think Devontae Smith was better than him coming out. And he's just automatically going ahead of some of these guys because they're number 2s in their offense. And he's going to get a ton of targets. Tet McMillan is. In terms of skill, what's to stop the Panthers from adding somebody else next to him next year and he becomes the number 2? Well, I don't think that's an impossibility.
I mean, that's part of it, but that he is going to be a number 1 right away. He's younger than those guys. And like the prospect profile is arguably just as good as it was for Addison and Devontae Smith. Like, McMillan averaged he averaged 108.8 yards per game over his final 2 college seasons. And Noah Fifita is not any sort of star at quarterback for Arizona.
Nobody played with him since high school.
Yeah, but I mean,
this will be the first time he has a non-Noah Fifita quarterback.
I mean, do you think McMillan is not? Maybe we didn't talk about this enough in the spring. Like I think McMillan's a pretty advanced route runner, and he's 6'4". Like the only real knock on him is that he's not a burner. But
yeah, I thought Keon Coleman was really good too, and he didn't come down with a lot of stuff, right? So
McMillan had much better college numbers than Keon Coleman did.
You also played in the Big 12. So look, I think McMillan is good, but I do think, I think Roma Dunze is better than him. And Roma Dunze had a bad year last year, right? And I also think Bryce Young is not guaranteed to be legitimate. I think it's just as likely he backslides as he gets better. I think, do I think he's going to get better? Yes. If you asked me, I would say yes. But is it within the realm of possibility that he's not the guy? That is also true. So
I think for me, he's wide receiver 18 in ECR, and you look at some of the names behind him, like you mentioned Addison and Smith. I think the reason why I'm really comfortable having him there, if not a little higher, is less about McMillan, although I think I might be higher McMillan than you, Bogman, but I think it's more about the guys behind him. Like, we know Devontae Smith is going to be the number 2 for as long as A.J. Brown is there. We know Jordan Addison is not overtaking Justin Jefferson. There's a chance Tet McMillan, they add some great number 1 stud piece that, saddles him with number 2 targets in this offense. But there's a chance that doesn't happen, and he just has that, runway. Smith's 4 years older and is locked into number 2, unless AJ Brown were to move on. So, and like guys like Zay Flowers is 2 spots behind him. Like Tet's I think he can get way more touchdowns than Zay will. Roma Dunze had a bad year.
Zay is a better wide receiver than Ted, I think too. And by the way, like again, I have him in this tier of 16 to 26 with all the guys that we're talking about. So I freely admit that, by the end of the year, could he be at 16 instead of 26? Of course, he could be a wide receiver too. But going into the year, I just can't put him ahead of those other guys because I guess I don't believe in him as much as other people do.
Yeah, I'm just looking at other guys in this tier, like not your tier, but in ECR, it's like DJ Moore, DK Metcalf. Those guys are in their late 20s now. Yeah, Terry McLaurin's going to be 30 soon. I would just rather have Ted if I'm building out a team. And
Og says his fantasy teams have the fountain of youth in their team clubhouse. Like you don't have to worry about that.
How about I'm just confident that I'm going to be able to pick the right guys in the rookie draft. How about that?
Well, I think Ted is one of the right guys in a rookie draft. So one guy that we already talked about in this episode, James Cook. This month, if you want a chance to win a signed James Cook Bills jersey for free, courtesy of our friends at pristineauction.com, all you have to do is subscribe to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel right now. Drop a comment below on any video, and that is it. We'll be announcing a winner right here on the channel. So make sure to turn on those notifications so you can know when new videos are up and to claim your prize.
Those red Bills jerseys are completely awesome, by the way.
Yeah. That bring back the red helmet too, right? I saw that. All right, next receiver here. This is one that I think everybody probably could have guessed was going to be on this list of, widest gap in rankings. It's George Pickens. Unshockingly, Bogman has him higher. Wide receiver 19, 35th overall, while Fitz has him wide receiver 31, 61st overall. So very wide gap here. Bogman, you can go first here with you being the high guy. And obviously, you know a lot about Pickens. Wide receiver 19 feels aggressive, but I know you feel really confident in this take.
All right. Yes, it's an insanely high ranking for George Pickens. It's been talked about on this show before. You don't have to take him where I rank him. Okay. So understand that. But I think you just get a ton of upside. I don't think this guy got a fair shake in Pittsburgh. 88th in catch percentage. Yes, that's bad. He also had miserable quarterback play since he's been in Pittsburgh. 14th in yak per reception, 25th in yards per route run, 18th in ADOT. He obviously has a lot of, issues in terms of being a locker room guy and being a guy that is going to produce on the field and not be lazy. But I think that's maturity stuff. And I do think that once you get shipped out, you're kind of on notice, right? You got traded once. Now you need to do the stuff. And by the way, also having CeeDee Lamb in this room next to him, knowing, look, I'm not the number one wideout anymore. I have to go out there and prove this. I think that added with the fact that you get Dak Prescott, you have a lack of a running game here in Dallas. I just think if you see an improvement in effort in George Pickens, you're going to see his real talent shine through to the top. And I think he's going way too low. I think he's much better. This is the one that the Steelers are going to lose on in trading the wide receiver. They've won all these other deals, but I think even with his antics and his locker room nonsense, he's still a net positive. And I think for fantasy, you have to view him as that as well. And a lot of people just don't.
Fitz, again, it's not like you're like crazy low on Pickens, but you do have him as like a mid wide receiver 3 as opposed to a mid wide receiver 2 where Bogman has him, and more of like an early 6th round ish pick in a 1 QB format. Do you feel like you are actively trying to fade Pickens, or do you feel like you are more just kind of in line with everybody else and Bogman is high? High on Pickens, not,
Yeah. I got you, Worm.
I have to be a little more conciliatory, I think, on the Pickens argument. I probably am too low, and I do think Bogman is a little too high, and probably the right ranking is somewhere in between where we are. And
probably what his ECR is.
I do have to give Bogman some grief, though, about like the, guys, the divas getting their act together once they are shipped out to another team. Like Antonio Brown and Terrell Owens were so much better after they went went somewhere else. Like they were totally straight laced after that.
Well, I get my thing with Pickens is he's not doing stuff off the field, right? Like he's not getting DUIs or anything violent. It's all stupid things between the lines. It's laziness. Exactly. It's straight up laziness. And as a young man, okay, some immaturity can be accepted. You're growing up. Now you've been traded. You're an adult. You're a man. You're playing across from a guy that should eat up coverage to leave you one-on-one. Now, if you don't win here, then you're a nothing burger, honestly. Right. So, I think he's going to be really good.
Yeah, but to your point, like it's true that the bigger a diva you are, the better you have to play to convince your employer that you're worth the headache. So, that's always the concern, and we have to dock Pickens maybe at least a little for that. And just because, man, if this guy is his head on straight, like even as a blocker, like he will wreck guys as a blocker if he is focused and on, and then sometimes you'll see him just not even attempt to execute his blocking assignment. I guess so. The one other issue I have with Pickens is that he has never been a big target earner. Like he's averaged 6.1 targets a game over his 3 seasons, and his high water mark was last year 7.4 targets a game. I don't think 7.4 is in his range of outcomes this year with CeeDee Lamb, at least if Lamb stays healthy all year. So, I'm a little worried about that, and maybe that caps his ceiling a little bit. But no question, like Pickens has just freaky ball skills. This dude is an absolute acrobat with those crazy
he had a lot of drops last year. He was like 101st in drop rate. He had only a 38% win in contested catches last year. Like,
which seems low considering how well he just high points it on those sideline throws. I mean,
that is not what it should be. He's clearly not playing with 100% effort. And I think if the Cowboys can unlock it, look, there's plenty of guys with a ton of skill that never did a damn thing because of their effort in the NFL. I don't think with as much talent as he has, he can be like this much longer.
Yeah.
He's got to, like you said, the talent has to match the problems on the field.
I do like the situation. Like he could be a 60 catch, 1,000-yard guy in Dallas. No question about it this year. And my redraft ranking is pretty close to where my Dynasty ranking is for him, which is weird for a young player, but that's where the diva concerns come in for me.
You want him as a wide receiver 3 or 4, like that. That's what you want him to be, that team, swing. Yeah, on your fantasy team, you want him to be that swing guy as your wide receiver 3 or your flex play with upside. That's where you want Pickens.
Well, that's how I've got him ranked, Boggs.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Bogman. You have him ranked as a 3rd round pick.
But how did I start this? I said you don't have to take him where I have him ranked.
I'm really curious to see where he is, like what team he's on a year from now. Because I like the fit right now. I'm curious long term what it'll look like. We have one more receiver here, which we'll go to. We're going a little bit long. Jerry Jeudy, and this one I just thought was kind of interesting. We don't really talk that much about Jeudy on the show, Obviously, he is disappointed relative to draft capital early on, has had stretches where he's looked really good. It's been somewhat dependent on the quarterback play. That's a big question mark right now. Fitz, you've got him wide receiver 29, 58th overall. Bogman, wide receiver 38, 76th overall. Fitz, why do you like Jeudy?
It's funny. It seems like Jeudy has been around for a long time, but he just turned 26 in April. So he's basically just entering his prime. And last year, we finally got the Jerry Jeudy we had been waiting for ever since he was drafted 15th overall out of Alabama in 2020. Got 90 catches, 1,200 yards, 4 touchdowns. And that was with Jeudy averaging 3 catches and 38 receiving yards a game in his 7 games with Deshaun Watson starting at quarterback. So I do realize the quarterback position is still a major issue for the Browns, although Jeudy investors are probably going to be pretty happy if Joe Flacco makes a bunch of starts for Cleveland this year. But it really does seem like the light went on for Jeudy last season and the breakout was legit. And look, this dude is really pretty good at what are probably the 2 most important attributes for a receiver: running routes and making yardage after the catch. And I don't think wide receiver 29 is too crazy a price for him.
Bogman?
Yeah, so I think what we see in Cleveland is an effort to move away from the structure of the offense that they had last season, right? This is why they drafted Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson, right? Is because they want to run the ball more. They led the league in pass attempts last year because they were losing in so many games. 38.9. But when Stefanski came to Cleveland, they were 28th in 2020, 28th in 21, 21st in 22. It wasn't until they started to lose some of these games, 2023, Joe Flacco came in because Watson went down. They didn't have a good running game. They started to pass the ball a bunch. I think you're seeing an effort to restructure this, right? So we'll see what's going on with Judkins, of course. Who knows? But the Browns have run this offense. They might run the offense through Joe Flacco. That's possible. But as soon as they go 1-6, they start, you're going to see Gabriel. You're going to see Shedeur Sanders. You're going to see a young quarterback come in here and likely struggle, right? So what is Jeudy going to be when one of those guys comes in? Maybe it's a nice fit with Jameis Winston. Maybe it's not. So I just think we saw a glimpse of what he might be, right? We saw a glimpse of what Jerry Jeudy could be if everything clicked. I'm not sure everything clicked. I think it was a nice run with Jameis Winston. I'm just really not interested in rostering this dude. He seems volatile. They have no clear quarterback situation. They want to run the ball more. I don't want any part of most of the Browns offense that is in the run game.
Let's hit on a tight end here quickly, and then we will wrap up with some mailbag questions. Thanks, everybody, for sending those in. Like quarterback, there wasn't a ton of huge disagreement on the tight end. The biggest one was Isaiah Likely, who obviously is not the number 1 tight end on his team right now, at least going into the season, but is somebody that's really talented and younger. Fitz, you've got him tight end 10, Bogman tight end 15. Fitz, you've got him 112th overall, Bogman 151st overall. So a wider gap in the overall then at the position, but not crazy far apart either. Fitz, you can go first on this one. What do you like about Likely? And is it just as simple as if Andrews isn't there next year, we're going to love this guy?
It is that simple, Worm. Like, very good pass catcher, only 25 years old, and he's a year away from no longer being tethered to Mark Andrews. So, and we had talked about this, I think, in a previous show. In Likely's first 3 NFL seasons, in games that Mark Andrews has missed, and there have been 9 of them, Isaiah Likely has averaged 3.4 catches, 50.3 yards, and 0.7 touchdowns in those 9 games. That would work out to 58 catches for 855 yards and 11 touchdowns over a full season. And those are like rock solid tight end 1 numbers. So I fully expect Likely to be a consensus top 10 dynasty tight end at this time next year.
Bogman,
besides the fact that you're a Steelers fan, why do you hate Isaiah Likely?
Because he might not be in Baltimore either. He's a free agent too, by the way.
True.
So he may be gone. There's actually a lot of free agent tight ends that are pretty good next year. Kyle Pitts. We'll see.
Whoa.
Okay, hold on. How about David Njoku? David Njoku do anything for you?
I've always been lower on Njoku than others, but I'll allow it as the point you're making. I won't allow Pitts as the point.
Jake Ferguson? Zach Ertz, like
But
maybe just
I mean,
get
likely
a vet.
is a much higher ceiling than
He
Zach
does.
Ertz
He
at this
does.
point.
But back in Baltimore, if he's in Carolina, do I care?
See, I do. I think the appeal of likely. Sorry to cut you off, Bogman. You keep going in a second, but
but you're the likely guy, so please.
Well, I think the appeal of likely is that there are two paths to him being a starting tight end next year. One is he stays with Baltimore and Andrews leaves. The other is the Ravens say, "Hey, we'll bring the Andrews back in the cheap," and likely says, "I want to go somewhere and get paid and be the number one guy." So whether it's Baltimore or not, I do expect him to be atop the tight end depth chart on whatever team he's on a year from now.
I mean, maybe he's on top of the depth chart, but I mean, we could see Pitts break out. We could see Kincaid break out. We could see Taylor, Arroyo, Ferguson, Strange. Like there could be a lot of tight end breakouts. So, putting him higher than where I have him, I just can't do because I just think he's in a big group. Could he move to the top of that group? Yes. But I just, Baltimore is a perfect situation for him. But I think in any situation that he goes to, he's still a big slot, and that's it. He's not a blocker. He's not a complete tight end. Like, let me ask you this, Fitzy. If we took Isaiah Likely and put him in, let's go with Carolina. Let's say things are pretty good. Ted is what you expect him to be. Now he's the second option pretty clearly in Carolina. And the Ravens trade for Michael Mayer next season. Would you rather have Isaiah Likely, or would you rather have a guy like Michael Mayer, who is a complete tight end, getting completely hosed behind Brock Bowers in Vegas, right?
Assuming Mark Andrews is gone from Baltimore too, like Mayer's the guy.
Yeah.
I think I'd still rather have Likely, but I understand the premise of your case.
Right.
It's a good one.
Yeah. And that's a fair argument. And I'm not saying one is right or one is wrong. I'm just saying I don't know where Likely is going to be next year. If he's in Baltimore and Mark Andrews is gone, best case scenario for him, I think. But if he's somewhere else, I just don't know what it's going to look like, what his usage is going to be, and who else goes to Baltimore. Some of these other guys can step up and have big years. I do like Likely. I think he's good. I don't think I'm much further off consensus than where he is. I am in the overall, but not in the positional, which, to be clear, I don't really care about overall rankings. Positional is way more important. But I think that there's just a lot of different scenarios. And I don't mean to poo-poo on your guy at all. I think he's pretty good.
I think he's really good. And I will think that even if he's not in Baltimore, this isn't just like a Ravens
thing.
Like,
that's fair.
I think likely, besides George Kittle, who's insane with the ball in his hands, I think Likely is one of the best tight ends I can recall watching, specifically with the ball in his hands. He is very, very good after the catch, and he just doesn't get the opportunity to do it that much. He stiff arms guys. He puts juke moves on players. You just don't see that even out of really good tight ends. Like Brock Bowers is not doing that after. Brock Bowers is much better tight end than
yeah.
But for reasons other than after the catch, I just think he's really good in that scenario. And if a team is going to give him top 2 on the team targets, like he could get in Carolina as an example, I'll be really interested in that.
Yeah, and by the way, we're making the arguments for and against these players. It's fun, but what you really want is you want to be able to see the upside and the downside of every player. That's the point that you need to come away with here is, look, I can squint and see a big upside on this player. What is the biggest? But what can they sink into? You need to consider both when doing your rankings and when drafting.
Let's wrap up with some mailbag questions here. Appreciate everybody sending these in. We're getting questions from Twitter, but I did that because they don't always have the chance to ask us questions. On Discord, you can ask questions all the time. We're doing those chats that I mentioned earlier in the show. There's also, AMA channels. You can ask Bogman and Fitz and other guys questions on there all the time. So fantasypros.com/chat if you have questions you want to ask and they don't get answered, on the show or anything like that. These are some questions from Twitter/X. I keep calling it Twitter out of habit. One question here. It's a half PPR league. You only have to start 2 wide receivers. The rest of the league is fairly normal, settings. Would you rather have Brian Thomas Jr. or Ashton Genty? There is no cost on the keeper, like you have to give up a certain round or dollar amount, nor any limit to the number of seasons kept. You just get one of them. Again, Brian Thomas Jr. or Ashton Genty. Fitz, this is in a 2 wide receiver league with 1 flex spot.
Yeah, Genty, because it becomes easier to fill those 2 wide receiver spots. And there's a chance that, Travis Hunter does have a measurable effect on Brian Thomas's production. Like, I don't think that's going to happen. And I worry that maybe well, I worry for the Hunter investors. He might play a lot of defense in the coming years, but yeah, I mean, Jeudy could be a special running back, and in a 2 wide receiver league, there's a lot less stress at that position.
Bogman?
8 for Jeudy, 11 for Brian Thomas, and I'm glad we can get back to agreeing on things, Fitzy. I'm exactly with you.
Would you guys have said Thomas if it was a 3 receiver format?
Or no, I would still have Jeudy, but it would be a little bit closer.
Hold on, let me consult my overall rankings here. I'm just I think in that case I would have looks like
we're going 3. Did you say 3 wide receiver or full PPR?
Oh man,
this is half PPR, 2 wide receiver, which skews it towards Jeudy. If it's 3 receiver and let's call it full PPR, then is that enough to get it to Thomas?
I have Thomas 1 spot higher, assuming 3 wide receivers.
Yeah. Okay.
Coin flip.
Yeah, they're very close. They're both awesome. Next question here, also involving Jeudy. Fast forward to August 2026, Najee Harris is on the Saints, and Omarion Hampton has cemented his place as the workhorse/bell cow for the Chargers. How significant will the difference in outlook be for Hampton and Ashton Jeudy moving forward? So that Najee Harris and the Saints stuff doesn't really matter. Just the idea that he's gone. How different will it be between Jeudy and Hampton if Hampton is the guy on the Chargers, Bogman?
Not very big. I mean, right now I feel like I have it fairly close anyway, because I'm real big on Hampton. I have him at 8. I have Achane I have Jeudy at 4. So could Hampton move past? Like, I have him behind Hall and Taylor right now. Yeah, I can move him ahead of those guys. So yeah, not very far at all.
Fitz?
Right now I've got Jeudy at 3 and Hampton at 7. The only reason I would still have a gap between the two, and maybe the gap would shrink a little bit, Greg Roman's offenses have not utilized the running backs as pass catchers all that much, even though that is a skill that Omarion Hampton absolutely has. I just think Jeudy's pass catching ability is going to get it's going to be used more in Las Vegas than Hampton's will for the Chargers.
Last mailbag question here. What is the best way to assess your new Dynasty League members' experience or fantasy skills if you don't know them before joining the league? This is more of a macro level, obviously not referring to a specific player. What do you think about that, Fitz? I'll read the question again. What is the best way to assess your new Dynasty League members' experience or fantasy skills if you don't know them before joining the league?
Do we think that he's talking about he's joining a league with all new members, he or she, or they're vetting a new member?
So when I read this question yesterday, when it came in, I was thinking the former, that it was him, that it was a new player joining his league, or sorry, the latter. I thought it was a player joining his league, but now that I'm rereading it, I wonder if it's him joining the league. I'm not actually sure.
This person may be joining the league. If it's someone joining a league, maybe look at a log of recent trades. I mean, it's kind of hard to vet because there are the rosters and everything. I think hopefully you know someone in the league and you can just contact them and ask for a scouting report.
Or you can chat, right? Like, fire up a conversation, the league chat, and say, whatever, I'm looking for this, or hey, did you guys see this piece of off-season news? See how they react to it. Like,
well, what's interesting,
it's not a good way
is the idea of like, what if this is a new league and it's like, oh, hey, I'm starting at startup. It's with a bunch of friends from college. Do you want to join in on this? So he doesn't know those other guys, because that could be the possibility too, where there's not like a previous history of the league to look at.
Is there money green?
Yeah. I mean, that's like, you just kind of probe and you engage people, whether it's the one person joining the full league or the league vetting a new person. Just reach out and communicate and chat and be friendly, and you'll probably, if you start talking football, you're going to get a pretty good gauge of what their level of fandom and fantasy experience is.
And as long as they're not ruining the vibe, that's the thing in terms of a fantasy league, right? The first F in fantasy should be fun. Like, that's the reason we came to this, honestly. But before it's anything else, it was fun, right? So, like, just don't bring in someone that's a bad time and going to ruin the league.
I think the best way is to somehow get access to their phone, check Spotify, see if they listen to the Fantasy Pros Dynasty Football podcast. And if they do, you can be assured they will know what
Get
they're
their credit
talking about.
score. Right.
But yeah, I think you just kind of figure it out as you go. And if it's really important to you, like you only want to play in a high stakes competitive league, or you're more casual and you don't want a bunch of sharks to take advantage of you, then you ask whoever it is that invited you to the league, or try to find out. The other thing I would say is, if it's your league that already exists and you're kind of trying to vet a new member, I think if it's somebody that you don't know their skills, you should be willing to, if you're the commissioner, be willing to step in and say like, hey, this guy's brand new. Okay, don't offer this guy a 4th round rookie draft pick for Brian Thomas Jr. just because he doesn't really know what he's doing. Like I think it's okay. It's not hand holding, in my opinion, to do stuff like that, to say, hey, we all started somewhere. Everybody kind of has to learn. The first fantasy league I ever played in, it wasn't a dynasty league, but the first league I ever played in, I dropped rookie Adrian Peterson in like week 3 for like no real reason. It's just, I don't know what I'm doing, right? Like, we all have to learn somehow. So I think it's okay to kind of step in and say like, listen, this is like not a trade you should be making. And, even if the league doesn't have vetoes, say, we're all trying to figure it out together at various points. Everybody starts somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's okay, even if they don't have experience and skill, is what I'm saying, and try not to take advantage of them. But thank you again for the question, to everybody who sent those in, to Kelly, Sammy, and Michael for tweeting in those questions. We'll do some of these more throughout the rest of the summer here. The opportunity to answer specific questions. We'll go ahead and wrap up there. I hope everybody enjoyed the Dynasty Rankings debates for Fitz and Bogman. I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.